Good morning, everybody. This is Bill Marianes from Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio, and I'm here with His Beatitude, Metropolitan Tikhon, the presiding hierarch of the Orthodox Church in America. We are here at the Assembly of Bishops annual meeting in Los Angeles, and I thought what better way to start it off, your Beatitude, than to have you come on and greet the audience and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what's going on at the Assembly meeting and also with your incredible jurisdiction. So what do you want to add?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me here, and it's always wonderful to talk about the work of the Assembly. We've actually been here for a few days already. Most of the bishops arrived on Saturday, and we had a Vespers service here at the cathedral, and then yesterday for the liturgy, we had a beautiful concelebration at the St. Savas Serbian Cathedral.
That was incredible, wasn't it?
It was really beautiful.
That church is fantastic in itself, but having all of y'all together doing it was wonderful.
And it was, I believe, one of the very few times that so many bishops have concelebrated. Last year, we did have the heads of the various jurisdictions that concelebrated. I was part of that as well, but this time we broadened it to having most of the other bishops, at least who were here, to concelebrate with us. So it was really a wonderful event. The singing was wonderful, awesome. And the cathedral itself, of course, is very beautiful. And we had a wonderful Serbian hospitality afterwards with a celebration of the Slava for Saint Sava, and beautiful presentations from the youth, and singing and dancing, and
an enormous quantity of great food.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like I'm still marveling
recovering.
With their hospitality. Yeah, their hospitality was extraordinary. Now, I probably should not confess this, but in the spirit of confession, I want you to know that as excited as we were to have all of the hierarchs together concelebrating and sharing, there was a little concern that just the communion cycle for all the hierarchs was going to take long. But I don't know how y'all did it. You did it in record time. It was amazing.
We have special tricks.
There's
liturgical methods.
I noticed that no cameras were allowed in the altar, so there clearly was something going on. I thought that's great. Now, the OCA is just such a vibrant and dynamic jurisdiction within the United States, and it's one that's growing, and it's one that everywhere I go, I'm seeing new opportunities and new ministries starting up. So, what are your in this difficult year that we've all survived COVID, so to speak, and come through? What are some of your biggest takeaways from that you've seen in your incredible jurisdiction?
Sure. Well, I think certainly there have been a lot of challenges. COVID being one of the most real, I think, for all of us in our parishes and in our families. Very difficult time, sad time, especially for those who lost family members or endured sicknesses, and then all the sort of divisions that flowed from that. In terms of how the church responds, and so I think it was actually one of the best examples of cooperation, not only within the Synod of the OCA, but also on the Assembly level. We actually, as the pandemic broke out now several years ago, we started to have really common, regular meetings of the executive committee and try to hash out how the church ought to respond. And so within the Orthodox Church in America, we also followed a parallel process, and still now, of course, we're hopefully coming to the end of that. But I think it really, although it did highlight some differences of opinion on how to handle the pandemic, and there was a lot of unfortunately political approaches that sort of got interfered. But I think for the most part, I was very pleased with the clergy and the faithful, their sense of focusing on our salvation and what is the best way to respond to really a crisis, a health crisis that was really shaking up our lives. And that's why that's what the church is in part for, is to help us as human beings find our path through the vicissitudes of life. And certainly we had a lot of those, you know.
Oh Lord, yeah, that's exactly. Well, and it's interesting as when we were doing some history that some of the times that the Christian movement globally expanded the most readily was after crises, pandemics, and things of that nature that occurred. And so once again, there were opportunities for Orthodox churches to demonstrate what it means to be a Christian. And in the course that you mentioned something that I think is important for people to realize that the Assembly of Bishops not only meets annually, but there's also an executive committee that meets regularly, and of course you are on that executive committee.
Correct. Yes.
And you all met, on and off, but you met fairly regularly throughout the pandemic via Zoom and whatnot.
Right. Indeed. Yes. And it's I think a lot of that was very helpful just for us to share how each of our jurisdictions was approaching things and to try to come up with sort of a common approach, which was not always easy,
Yeah.
but especially with all the local civil guidance,
various rules in different jurisdictions and
yeah,
things like that.
so,
But I think it's important for people to understand that not only did, as dramatic as the COVID impact was, the assembly continued forward, but the executive committee actually, you probably met more frequently
yes,
and interacted more. And so in a kind of bizarre sort of way, that pandemic actually helped bring about greater dialogue.
right,
In a meaningful way. Now, if I can get personal for a second, if I can't, you beat me with your staff. That's okay, right?
All right.
I remember one time when we were on a Zoom during the pandemic, and you alluded to the fact that in an effort to diversify your own skill set, you were picking up the guitar.
Yes,
So
yes.
how's that going?
Well, it's going a little slower than it was, during the pandemic. I had a little more free time,
Right.
but I still, it's been a few months since I did, well, a few weeks ago, I did try,
Okay.
picked up my, I have an acoustic guitar. I also have an electric guitar now too.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it was given to me actually by Alex Lifeson
Mm-hmm.
of the rock group Rush.
Yeah.
So
So
it's,
you really have connections in the music industry.
yes, well, at least one.
At least one, right? Well, that's okay. That's all it takes. So in other words, what you're saying is that the tour that we're going to organize of you singing and playing on the guitar has to be pushed out a little bit
It will
longer.
push it out a little bit longer.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
yes.
Well, that's
I
right.
need a little more practice.
Need a little more practice. Okay, we can. Well, you can get your friend in Rush to kind of help you, maybe, and
We'll see.
we'll do a little. Or we can submit a request to the other bishops in the assembly to say who else plays an instrument. Maybe we can put the.
I'm sure there's a few. I
Yeah.
know there's a few.
Well, one of the things that you and I got to work on together that was such a blessing, and I'm so grateful to you for it, is helping develop during the COVID period a strategic plan for your diocese up in New England,
Yes.
for which you were locum tenens, and seeing the groups of people come together and the dedicated faithful come together and continue to want to work on helping and encourage things was just really enlightening. And since then, we've done a series of programs in your diocese of Eastern Pennsylvania. You just finished a strategic plan for one of your parishes in Harrisburg, and the level of dynamism and commitment within the OCA Church is really palpable, and you get to see it as the presiding hierarch, right? I mean,
Sure. Yeah. No. It's always really encouraging and just inspiring when I kind of visit or even hear. I don't get to visit everyone
Right.
everywhere, but just I know I used to be the bishop in Eastern Pennsylvania, so I
you know that well.
I connect. I hear. I kind of stay connected with, or I watch what's going on, and definitely in a lot of the parishes there's a lot of energy and really desire to um, live out the gospel in our modern context, which is not easy for
Yeah.
all of us. There's a lot of challenges and modern difficulties that face all of us.
Yeah, modernity has not been a friend necessarily at all of our activities.
Right.
Well, one of the things that's always impressed me about the OCA parishes that I visit is amongst their beautiful music. I mean, really, I always joke with them that we need to take some of the great music traditions into some of our other jurisdictions, but the diversity of the parishioners in the parish and the welcoming and the openness that those parishes feel to bring people in and get them to be working together. I think it's just, what's the magic? How do you all do that? What's the secret sauce to doing that?
Well, it's I think it's a grace of the Holy Spirit primarily, but also I think it sort of reflects the vision of the Orthodox Church in America, which is to it's a vision that's perhaps not fully implemented, but to really have a true local Orthodox Church in this geographic area that we call the United States. But you know, and in spite of the, especially now, there's global tensions
Yeah.
and challenges and geopolitical events, of course, in the war in Ukraine, and then just the resulting, ecclesiastical tensions that arise from that. So I think in many ways, like our response to the pandemic, at least in our OCA parishes, we have parishioners that are of Russian background, of Ukrainian background, converts, and in Mexico we have Mexicans, and in Alaska we have native Aleuts and Yupiks, and so I think there's really a sense of let's focus on the Christ, the one who unites us all, and we all know there's realities, there's ethnic identity, there's personal feelings. We have the internet and people just expressing their opinions on everything, and so there's so many challenges that lead to division that I think in the church we all inherently recognize in our hearts that it's going to take an effort to maintain that unity, and not everyone, I think, recognizes it, but I think the more people, such as people that are willing to do a self-assessment of their parish or their diocese or their own family, you kind of it's self-examination. That's our spiritual approach to life. What's lacking, what's broken in me, what needs to be filled up a little bit, and I think when the community does that together, then you see the fruit of that. So people lift each other up and encourage each other, and then you see, with a good priest, with an energetic, lay people, you can see a lot of transformation, even in a group of very diverse people that might be from completely different backgrounds. It's just wonderful to see that fruit come.
And I think that's probably one of the blessings you have in your ministry, is the opportunity to go to those very diverse communities and see people loving Christ and loving each other and just staying true to the core. And we may have our differences and agreements, and we can talk about them over coffee or whatever, but at the end of the day, and seeing everybody reach out and help each other has got to be really a joy.
Sure. Yeah, I was just in Mexico a few weeks ago.
Oh, really?
I go every year to Mexico City at our cathedral with Archbishop Alejo. Archbishop Benjamin was with us this year, and we do the blessing of waters every year. And this year we went actually a couple hours outside of Mexico City to one of the villages where they're building actually a theological school.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic! I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's just started fairly recently. They had someone donated some land, and they've been sort of providing theological education, training priests at the cathedral. But they've had this opportunity to build this center, and so we went and we blessed it. But it's very different. The walls they have a chapel built, but it's just the walls right now. And it goes very slow.
It's like an outdoor.
Right now it's an outdoor chapel, but they're hoping to finish it. But in Mexico you see such really the level of poverty. But even in spite of that, there's such energy for the church and for building communities and expanding theological education. So,
is there a way that people that are interested in supporting that can help that? I mean, is there a website, or are you all organizing something in that regard?
Sure. Actually, at our All-American Council in July in Baltimore last year, we initiated two opportunities for assistance to the Diocese of Alaska and to the Diocese of Mexico. So we have, if people go to our OCA website, it may be buried a little bit in the news sections, but there's several posts which had the links to donate to specifically the building of this theological St. Basil Academy in Mexico, and also to contribute to a clergy fund in Alaska. the average salary of the clergy in Alaska is $7,000 a year.
Yeah.
So,
And the cost of living there is
yes,
excessively high compared to most other places.
Yeah. So, as Grace Bishop Alexei he's establishing a fund that will hopefully supplement the salaries of the clergy.
Right.
So, he's trying to build up an endowment.
Well,
So,
they have to travel great distances, and sometimes
just,
they don't have existing facilities. I was helping a parish up there in a different jurisdiction, and just listening to their struggles, I kind of felt like we are blessed to have as few struggles compared to what they're going through.
Sure. Yeah. So it's very, and there's many worthy causes to contribute to, but those are the ones that
you're prioritizing.
I'm prioritizing myself and within the Orthodox Church in America, but certainly, we welcome anyone to help out.
Well, there's got to be some people out there that can really appreciate the opportunity to help build a seminary and support the efforts in Mexico as well as in Alaska. So to you all who are watching and listening, this is a unique opportunity. Okay, I got one more question for you, although we could do this forever. You just completed, as you said, your All-American Council. And what were some of the highlights? What were some of the biggest takeaways that you received from that opportunity to bring everybody together?
Sure. Well, I think just that, the opportunity to bring everyone together. A few years at our last All-American Council, or 2 councils previously, there was a proposal to perhaps hold the council every 4 years rather than every 3 years, which is our current timing of it. And the overwhelming response was like, no, we need to do this more often. The clergy enjoy the opportunity to see each other, clergy establishing sort of clergy brotherhood a little more strongly.
Well, I was one of the invited guests doing a program at that one, and I remember I'm sitting in the back while that was being discussed, and of course the red cards go flying up that no, but I don't know if you could hear up in the dais, there was a lot of murmuring, to quote scripture. There was some murmuring in the back of the room like, no, we don't want to, forget the money for a second. We've got to get together more. So I thought that was wonderful there was that sense of community that was established.
Sure. Yeah, no, and so that's always encouraging, and just for me, I'm celebrating my 10th anniversary right now.
You stole my thunder. So share with everybody, because we just celebrated it downstairs with all the assembly.
Right. So actually, yesterday was my 10th anniversary of enthronement. So I was elected in November of 2012.
Right.
And then enthroned in Washington on the Feast of St. John Chrysostom. So I was actually elected on the Feast of St. John Chrysostom, November 13th, and enthroned on the Feast of St. John Chrysostom in January.
So you got a special connection with St. John Chrysostom.
Yeah.
So 10 years. So 10 years. You've seen a lot in 10 years, and you've survived a lot in 10 years, and 10 years that were very unusual, not only we talked about COVID, we talked about the geopolitical landscape, we talked about the inter-Orthodoxy landscape.
Sure.
I mean, have you had a chance to take a breath?
I try to take a breath. I try to take a day off a week, so I can try to, but it's hard, a long breath. I don't know if I've had that opportunity. I do, it's been a whirlwind, certainly, and but so many blessings, including, the assembly itself is, a little over 10 years now, but more or less that my years as the Metropolitan coincided with the establishment and the formation of the assembly and the continuing work. So there's been so much wonderful developments on that level, but also within the Orthodox Church in America as well. We've, as all jurisdictions, we go through different challenges, and we, but by the grace of God, I think we're at a place of relative peace at this point.
Well, I have to then confess one more lie, and that is that I told you it was my last question, but now I've got one last question because you just spurred it in my head.
All right.
Look in your crystal ball for the next 10 years, so that God willing, if we're all around and we're still surviving and we're interviewing you 10 years from now, what do you think we're going to see happen? You can cover it however you want to. In the OCA, you can cover it in the face of Orthodoxy in America, globally. I'll leave you take it wherever you want to take it.
Sure. Well, I'll answer, I guess, more personally, perhaps. Because I've been thinking about this. What's going to happen in the next 10 years?
10-year anniversaries tend to cause that future view, don't they?
Yes. So, and my own thought is that we've just, actually, I've just moved from Long Island, where our chancery was
Right.
located, to the Washington, D.C. area.
I'm not sure that was a better idea. We would welcome you down south where you could,
Okay.
you could have a better lifestyle. But again,
Well,
I know there's other reasons
I'm in
why.
Virginia, so some people might say I am in the
You're in
South.
the Commonwealth. Yeah, you're close. But you're on
closer.
the northern part of Virginia.
Yes.
We still count that D.C. You got to get to the southern part of the Commonwealth
Okay.
before we
All
accept
right.
you.
But one of the reasons I wanted to do this and why we moved was because so that I could be in my diocese.
Right.
So because I was in New York, and my actual diocese, my parishes, I have a small diocese of 11 parishes and missions, but we are in, that's where I find the most energy, is actually visiting my parishes. Certainly I have a lot of important tasks as the Metropolitan, and a lot of visits, Assembly of Bishops meetings.
A few more rubber chicken dinners along the
Right.
way, and ceremonies. And
but I'm really, really looking forward to an opportunity to really work on the life of our my diocese.
Right.
I'm not going to neglect, of course, my
Right.
administrative responsibilities, but just try to encourage vocations. We just started a new archdiocesan choir. With just our 11 parishes. It's a pan-Orthodox choir. We invite anyone to come.
Oh, awesome.
Juliana Woodall is known to many, I'm sure, one of our premier choir directors in North America. And so we're trying to encourage the singing life of our parishes, but also just the liturgical life. I'd like to really just, for us to focus on developing our Orthodox presence, our Christian presence in the local area, which we are doing. Everyone is doing the best they can, but I hope we can really just focus on the life in Christ and develop that, and hopefully share the wealth that we have as the Orthodox Church.
Well, if there were, I'm not going to be political, but if there was ever a place that could use orthodoxy in Christ, the Washington, D.C. area, it's hard to argue there's a better place, that there's a great mission field there.
Indeed.
So you got a busy 10 years in front of you, is what you're saying.
Well, I'm grateful for everyone's prayers and support in that process.
Well, we're grateful to you and everything you do, not only as a presiding hierarch on the executive committee of the assembly, being locum tenens at different places, having your own diocese, and also tending to the flock throughout the country in a very dynamic and growing jurisdiction. And thank you for everything you do. And as we would say in Greek, chroniopola, many years. You're going to have another 10 years at least of this, and then we'll do another 10 years. And I'll leave others to celebrate that with you. But
we'll just take one decade at a time.
Is that it? Okay, great. And then
or maybe 5 years.
And by the end of that decade, now we need to have the album released, and we need to have a road tour of
All right.
your musical. Just put that on the long list of your to-do list. Okay.
All right, we'll work on that.
All right, fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We've had an incredible opportunity to sit here with His Beatitude, Metropolitan Tikhon of the Orthodox Church in America. We're here at the Assembly Bishops meeting with the entire Ancient Faith Radio team over here. And it's Bill Marianes from Stewardship Calling wishing you goodbye. And we're going to bring some other hierarchs over here so you can get the perspective of everything that's going on as we continue to bring people closer to Christ and each other. God bless you, and we'll be with you in a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you. You were awesome. You were awesome.